Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Sex. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
What's up, guys? My name is Seth Studley. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. Today, we are talking about growing your sexual vocabulary, and I think it's going to be fun. You guys are going to like it.
All right, let's dive in. Today's show is brought to you by Faithful Counseling.
You guys go to getfaithful.com/anatomy of marriage. Get a therapist, get a counselor. You guys, if you haven't talked to someone about your problems, about your past issues, about anxiety, depression, all this stuff, go to getfaithful.com/anatomy of marriage. I am a therapist, a licensed therapist. I do therapy. I have gone to therapy. I've done individual counseling. We've done couples counseling. You guys, therapy is around for a reason. It helps. So go to getfaithful.com/anatomy of marriage to get the help that you deserve and that you should get, and that the help that you want your spouse to get to.
Sure, that also. You can take a free online quiz when you go to getfaithful.com/anatomy of marriage, so check it out.
All right, guys, let's grow some things. I'm talking about your sexual vocabulary, right?
Yes.
I'm not talking about carrots or potatoes or
No
anything
one
like
listened
that.
to that. You reference things that no one knows. Seth
Talking
is
about gardening.
weird.
So, all right, grow your sexual vocabulary. So, Melanie, take it away. What do you mean by this?
So I wanted to do this episode. I think it's very important that couples are talking about sex and intimacy in order to have a fulfilling sex life and intimacy life.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that Seth was just saying, like, you're not talking about carrots and potatoes, which nobody got, was that on an episode on our Patreon, I talked about how having a great sex life is akin to watering and taking care of a garden before you harvest it, right? The sex part is like the harvesting part. So when I say harvest a garden, that means when you go outside and pick the things you planted.
Yeah.
And it takes months, you guys, for certain things to grow. Pumpkins take forever to grow. They don't just like pop up on Halloween. They're
Right.
growing in the summer, all summer long. And by Halloween, they're giganto and you can pick them.
They're ready to
But
go.
all summer long, what did you have to do?
The farmer was out there cultivating stuff, right?
They were watering.
Planning out.
They were getting, if there's like a weasel in the farm's garden, they had to get the weasel out.
A weasel?
They had to weed. They have to water. They have to fertilize.
Mhm.
So again, we have this stupid idea that somehow we can have a wonderful sex life by simply going to the garden and like pulling up whatever thing we want, although we have not paid attention to it at all
Right.
any other time of the year. And so when I say grow your sexual vocabulary, this is a bigger conversation about how do we actually talk about the things that we want, the things that bring us connection and pleasure, like Dr. Tina Shermer-Sellers talks about
Yes.
in her work. We've had her on our show 100,000 times. She was at our Back to Basics boot camp this last August. And so how do we begin to actually talk about these things? Because this is where we think, or I think most couples fall short, is they say, I want a better sex life. Well, what does that mean? Well,
I don't know. Do it more.
like, I don't want to say it.
You don't say it. Right.
Right. So how do we begin the process of actually saying the things that we want that would actually bring us connection and pleasure? And in our own journey, the first time that I actually thought I need to say something about this was when we talked about this in another episode on Patreon too, was like I was burnt out like toast that our kid Tough made, because all he is burnt toast. I was like so fried that because we had little kids, when Seth would initiate sex, I was like, the last thing I want to do is be touched more right now.
Right.
And I remember saying to Dr. Corey Allen on season 1 of the podcast, I was like, I just want relaxation sex. Like, what is that? Like, what even is that? And it was my first attempt at communicating and expanding my sexual vocabulary to be more explicit and clear and like concise for what I actually wanted. Now, obviously, relaxation sex is not a thing. Like, it's not a term.
It is a thing.
It's the beginning of an idea, and I needed to clarify even more what that means.
Okay, so
Right?
let's increase people's vocabulary by literally talking about relaxation sex. So what does that mean? It's not obligatory sex. It's like, oh, great kind of thing. Is there... Okay, so say that you and I, and this is Anatomy of Sex, so we can talk about anything. Say that me and you...
Now, remember, this is free. It is to our general audience, so
that's
you
fine.
be careful.
Say that we are having relaxation sex right now. What's going on? What happened? So describe that. It's not like crazy hanging from the chandeliers or whatever. We don't even have chandeliers, so why even say that? We don't live in a castle.
What is this, like 1929 with flappers on the chandelier?
Flappers. Anyway,
Now that's funny. We're thinking the same thing, and it's
yeah.
funny.
Bacon.
Bacon in the breeze.
Bacon flappers.
Someone needs to make carvings look like bacon flaps.
So
that would be
relaxation sex is maybe slower, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of different comfortable positions.
You think
it's
of
not
like
craziness.
I think of the like it's sensual. I know that sounds stupid.
It's
but
warm.
Again, this is how we increase our sexual vocabulary. We have to say stupid words like sensual.
I'm not gonna label it stupid.
Don't labia that word. It's not fair.
Gosh. You're making all the V jokes right now. Usually it's me.
Yeah. Those are vulva jokes. The vulva's the outside, not the inside, guys. The inside's the vag.
Boy.
Anyway, just education, simple education, expanding vocabulary.
That's
but
right.
yes, when I think of relaxation sex, it is like I'm not trying to put on a production. Basically, I'm not like worried about, and this is a thing women think about. I don't know if men think about this. I don't know if men think, period.
Nope. Just walking boners,
joking.
that's all.
Just boners with feet. But anyway, here I come down the road. But I think of a lot of women think of having to feel like they have to perform for their husbands. Now, there is a reason for this. In our marriage, Seth used to say things like, can I call you out on this a little bit?
I don't know what you're going to say.
He used to say something like along the lines of like, do you even enjoy this? You're not saying anything or doing anything.
Oh, right.
And I was like, apart from like receiving the boner and like, what else am I supposed to do?
Right.
So that clearly came from maybe porn, maybe past relationships, but all that sparked
No, it didn't.
Just hold on.
Actually.
All that sparked in me was put on a production and then I'll be happy.
Right.
And I was like, oh, pretend?
So how we do sex is how we do life, right? So you sometimes are hard to read even out of the bedroom, right? I'm like, do you like the food I just made you? You didn't say thanks. You didn't look at me when I gave it to you. I don't know, right? So that's where that comes from.
You're so dramatic.
I'm
so
not
there's
dramatic.
in our Patreon.
That's where it came
okay,
from.
here's what you do. Here's what you do. You go to patreon.com/anatomy of marriage and you become a part of our Patreon group because you will see the behind the scenes. We are having a debate, the great debate, the drama king debate, the drama queen debate. Which one is more dramatic? And it's always Seth. There has never been
Nobody
one
said that.
time when you have
said,
made a meal and I went, and didn't look at you, didn't say thank you.
Anyway, we're getting we're getting
meal.
off topic, but the point of that story is like, okay, your eyes are closed. I don't know. You're like really being still. Do you want me to just stop?
Hashtag enjoying myself.
Okay.
So
that's fine.
Yes. So back to the whole conversation of relaxation sex versus
you enjoy yourself.
What is not relax? You
Why'd
always
you
push me out of the center and it drives me bonkers. So not relaxation sex was the opposite of relaxation. Tense sex, right? So it's when I think of relaxation sex, it includes things like it's sensual, it's warm, it's calm, it's soothing.
Are you dressed up?
Oh, I don't know. If that relaxes me, probably I would have cozies on.
Yeah.
If it was anything, it would be like fuzzies, like warm fuzzy J's.
I remember on this is an old episode of Sexy Marriage Radio.
When she talked about the pants?
Yeah, the pants, because the lady was always cold and stuff
host,
like that,
the old host.
So she had like a hole right where the crotch was, but then like flannel pajamas
Fleece
on.
leggings.
Which is fine. That's fine.
Right. And so, but it's like that, where it's like, I'm not cold. I'm not trying to put on a production.
What if I had those? Wouldn't that be funny?
Yeah. So what else can you think of as...
Relaxation sex?
Yes.
Some massages. Remember we got like a candle one time that was, what was it? It was like an oil candle. Like you burn it, but then you pour it on yourself and then it's like massage.
I don't think we ever did it.
Oil.
Did we?
Or maybe it was just a candle
it just
that
smelled nice.
I don't know.
We have
I don't
the
remember.
candle.
But it
nice.
wasn't like quickie sex, which we've hardly ever had quickies, I think.
I can't. That's painful. I'm not interested in that at all. I have inflammation in the body parts.
It wasn't just
right. So it's connecting.
It was chill.
Yeah.
Like it was just chill. Now the opposite of that is like, all right, you put something fancy or whatever, and then we're like, oh, it's like
an energy.
energetic, like there's different
energetic in a different
places,
way.
there's different whatever kind of things going on, maybe
Items.
other stuff going on, items, oral sex.
What that's not, oh my gosh.
That's the thing.
It is not. Oh, okay. That was frustrating. Oral sex 100% would be a part of relaxation sex. I don't know where that
it could be both.
Frustrating
It
me
could be
now.
both.
Now I'm mad. Don't listen to this episode.
Oh, newsflash. Melody's mad. Great. What else is new?
That was funny. But again, this whole point of this whole episode is to expand our sexual vocabulary. And that was one setting, one way, one idea that sparked the expansion of the sexual vocabulary. Now, why does it even matter to expand our sexual vocabulary, do you think?
Well, education is power, right? The more we know about something, the more we can go, oh, I like this. That's the thing. Oh, let's try that out. I'm not uncomfortable talking about that. Let's talk about...
Or the more we know how to communicate something, the more likely we are to experience it.
So let's talk about orgasm, right? I think a woman knows if a guy has an orgasm, right? But a guy doesn't necessarily know if the woman has it. So we can expand our sexual vocabulary by saying, hey, when we have sex, do you have an orgasm? Does it feel good to you? What feels good to you? Right? And then just a real conversation around that. Like, don't talk about that. Oh, well, why not? It feels okay. I'll lead the conversation. It feels good to me when this and this and this. What feels good to you? Right? So you can even just start the conversation by what feels good to you. That can lead to like, do you have an orgasm? We've had emails like, yeah, I haven't had an orgasm in like 2 years. Or usually it's the woman, right? But opening our minds and vocabulary around stuff like that, which can lead to other conversations.
Right, which in essence, it just brings clarity, which is all you're after, right? Because if one of you is not, if the spouse, the wife isn't having orgasms, but the man never thinks to ask, but he kind of thinks about it, but he doesn't know because he's afraid to say it, and then she's not happy, and then they never talk about it. Like, it's all just fear. It's all just, well, I'm afraid to say that word.
Right. I think we've talked about this before, but sometimes I would be afraid to ask, although we kind of both knew it.
Knew what?
But
what's the it?
Like, say that if you weren't having an orgasm or something, like I'd be like, I don't want to ask because if I say it, then I know her answer. Then we'll be like, oh, like the thing we're talking about that we don't want to talk about is just right there in front of us now. Oh, now I've like opened up a can of worms. I should have just said nothing and let's just, had a weird, awkward dance kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's like,
what's the solution there? Vocabularily related.
I think being brave and vulnerable enough to talk about it, right? And so if I was really wise and I was thinking about this and I had both our best interests in mind and I know that you had a hard time talking about it, I would really try to talk about it in the most calm, collected, respectful way. You know what I'm saying? As possible.
Right.
And maybe it's things like, I can imagine that this makes you uncomfortable, but it's something I want to talk about so we can both grow in connection and pleasure, not just like, hey, I'm horny, let's, talk about boners and, whatever. It's not like that.
Right. And I think that a great tip too, there's a couple almost just like skill sets around talking about these things. One is do not talk about this stuff. Mostly if you're going to talk about something that's deficit, don't talk about it right before you want to have sex, right? Don't be like, oh, I'm feeling a little randy. Like,
what are you, British?
That's fun. I keep thinking of that Austin Powers, like, does this make you horny, baby? I don't know why. And then I think, does he say randy like all the time?
Probably.
But anyway, that idea is like, if you're going to say, oh, I actually don't like this thing, don't do that before you want to have sex. It'll make your partner upset potentially, right? You have more of a chance of ruining a potential good moment, but that doesn't mean you can't communicate it. So instead of saying, I don't like this thing, say, hey, how about we do this other thing instead, which does require expanding your vocabulary, right?
I find that we talk, what?
Yes.
What is wrong with you?
And there's some, like 9 times out of 10, I want to say like 5 things, and I say 1.5, and you cut me off, and it feels like you're just taking a boat and going, like you're changing the topic every time. So
vote now, guys. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Now I've forgotten. So
can I talk now?
Sure. You're going to anyway.
I find that it's easier to talk about sexual things while we're actually having sex.
Oh yeah, that was actually another thing I was gonna say. So there's different times of talking about this. One is don't talk about a deficit thing before, because it will probably turn one of you off, right?
I hate it when you do that thing. Want to have sex?
I know, yeah, no. But that was the other thing I was gonna say is that you can begin to communicate these things actually during sex, but again, not deficit focus. Say, oh, I love that thing. I love that. Do more of that. Or move this way. Do more of that. That feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
The second sort of added bonus to that is that you're actually in that state of mind. So it's easier to talk about those things, right? You're turned on. You are engaged in it. You want to talk about those things. Versus like if you were to talk about, which you always make fun of me for, when I am not in the mood for sex, I do not want to talk about sex. Ever. Ever.
Well, whose fault is that?
I didn't say it was anyone's fault. It's just how I am. I know.
Let's expand your vocabulary.
My gosh. Are you gonna? I'm gonna punch you with this.
I don't care.
Look.
Stop.
This is how it feels.
Stop it.
I love you.
You're the worst.
Anyway,
you're not. You're the best.
So that's what I'm saying is that for me, I will talk about it when I'm in the mood,
right?
Happily, and it will be a very productive conversation. But if you try to talk to me about that stuff when I'm not in the mood, it shuts me down. And I find it really unattractive. So
why? Is that a growth area for you, or is it just like
no?
No, I'm asking. I'm like the therapist, kind of curious part of me is like, hey, tell me why you can't talk about sex when we're not having sex.
I have a podcast called Anatomy of Sex. I can obviously talk about it when we're not having it. I have grown. Even Dr. Tina Shermer Sellers told me I had grown. Don't even with the looks at the camera. So that's the thing that bothers me. I do talk about it, but I am trying to communicate to you when you talk to me about sex and I am not in the mood for sex, it is unattractive. When you talk to me about sex, when we are having sex, that's great. Let's keep doing that. It is a turn. It's an accelerator for me, but it is a complete break when we're not having sex. It's, so many women I know talk about that same thing too.
What if the husband had a sex-related question that was possibly conflictual? You know what I'm saying?
No.
It's like,
what does that mean?
Like, let's see. Well, I can't think of
possibly conflictual.
Like, if I had It's like I'm not gonna talk about like while we're having sex. Oh man, I can't think of it right now, but I'm not gonna talk about and not even have one. So
how are you bringing value to people right now?
Okay, sorry. So talk about sex when you're having sex.
Yes.
Bring new ideas up around sex while you're having sex.
But be very careful with that. Because sometimes, a lot of times, if someone's like, hey, I want to try this thing, the first thought of their partner is, where'd you see that? Right? So be careful. Just be careful about it, is all I'm saying. I would say it's more like it's present moment stuff. Like, oh, that thing you're doing right now feels good. Let's do more of that. Or does this feel good to you? Not, hey, let's try this thing I saw in porn. Not that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So, okay.
Don't say that, but if you wanted to try something new, obviously, so you saw it somewhere, it didn't just poof in your mind. Can you say something like that while you're having sex and it not be a turnoff?
Maybe. I think a lot of it is in the delivery. It's just, hey, I think it would be really fun to do this. Like, I would love to do this thing with you. What should we try this? But not like, I think, I don't know. It's just delicate. There's no two ways about it. It's a delicate conversation to have. And it's definitely not something that I'm going to have outside of the bedroom with you. And I don't, right or wrong almost doesn't even matter in this case, right? Like, it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong if I don't like to talk about things outside of the bedroom. It just is.
It just is.
And so many women are that way. And I think it's like a protective mechanism. It's if I talk about this right now, is he going to want to touch me? It's this like, it's this protective, like, if I say something, he's going to interpret that as he's turned on. And now it becomes my responsibility to manage his boner. And I'm not interested in that. Right. So there's a whole world of that stuff that I think most guys aren't aware of. Because if you're a, what is it, spontaneous desire, spontaneous arousal thing that, what's her name talks about in Come As You Are, Emily Nagoski talks about, spontaneous arousal, people will just be aroused out of no, this walking down the street and be like, oh, sex sounds great.
Right.
And there was no like thing that initiated it, just popped into their head. What's the other one? Spontaneous or responsive?
Responsive? Spontaneous or not spontaneous?
Responsive. Like
know.
you responding to like you're walking down the street, you see someone kissing someone else and you go, oh, wait a minute, that might not
sex
be.
sounds good later.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So it's like there's two different sort of ways that we're wired. And
I think the guys will go along with this. Oftentimes guys are like, hey, I'm just glad to be having sex. I'm not going to say anything. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a fear of, oh, if I say that wrong or do this wrong, then she'll like want to stop kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So guys, if that resonates with you, like seriously write in. I want to know more about it. I've definitely thought that way before. Like, well, I'm not going to say this, or like, this is uncomfortable, but we're doing it, so I don't care. You know, it's like because one chance I get. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I just think
it's not that way anymore.
I think in that regard, like you could grow even just the ability to say, hey, move to the side, move that way, sit a different I mean, if it's like a matter of how we're sitting, connecting, like what our bodies are doing, then just say, hey, can you tilt more forward? I mean, that's literally a thing. Yeah. And so why would you not just say that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like a Jerry Seinfeld and
Answer
George Costanza
the question.
bit.
Why wouldn't you say
Why would
it?
I not say that? I don't know. To not like ruin the moment kind of thing.
How could you say it without ruining the moment? In like a life-giving
Hey, that feels
way.
good. Let me scoot over a little bit.
Or it feels better if you lean forward. Or something like it feels really good if you lean forward versus, ow, that hurts. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's, again, that's expanding your vocabulary. It doesn't mean when you're talking about growing your sexual vocabulary, it does not mean learn more words related to sex. It means how do we talk about these things in a way that really does help both of us have a better sexual experience all the time, every time. Because that's what we both want, right? And it does take a lot of courage and bravery and what would the word be? Like not planning necessarily, but like forethought. Like you have to really think like, how I say this is going to make a big difference in the next 30 minutes, hour, 10 years of my life. And if I can say this, whether that's requesting better sex, requesting deeper connection, requesting more passion, requesting more relaxation sex, whatever it is, or it's learning how to communicate the changes or additions or tweaks that would make the current stuff better. Right.
So if couples were like doing it in the same position all the time, that's all they do. You know, it's like, oh, well, we just missionary or who knows what.
Right.
Which I don't even know what it is. I think I do. It's like, hey, let's try this position. Or
what do you think the missionary position is?
Is it you laying down and me on top of you? Why is it missionary? That doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
Anyway, suggesting different positions or trying, hey, let's try a bunch of different positions because they all feel different and that might stimulate you differently. It might feel better for me. There might be deeper penetration or there might be less and those so that wouldn't hurt or there's all kinds of things you can do. Just be brave around it and be a little bit vulnerable. And also, this all circles back to connection and pleasure. There can be positions where, hey, I feel more connected with you if we're face to face, you know, rather than not face to face. Sure, that one's good. That feels good. But maybe we can do that one and then come back to this one and both orgasm at the same time.
And even communicating that to your spouse is valuable. Like saying, I feel more connection when we're looking each other in the eyes or whatever it is. I don't care. And you communicating that, being able to say those words out loud will then help your partner feel more valued and loved, right? Like there's a great serendipitous exchange.
That's right.
As you will.
It's like, oh, he feels more connected when we're missionary? I had no idea. I like feeling connected with my husband, so I'll do it that way or whatever.
Into the mission field.
Into the mission field. Is that what
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't even know. Actually, yeah, that makes me think about there are things that make me feel more connected and just relaxed rather than, I mean, let's face it. Sometimes some sex positions are hard. You feel like you're doing a freaking push-up and sit-ups for like 20 minutes straight. You're like, I'm getting a workout here. Yeah, that's good.
That's my secret plan. Trying to make you
weight loss plan.
Make you get ripped. No, say that way, Seth.
Hey, okay.
Harder, longer, go.
Oh no, your secret plan is foiled.
Bed shredding.
Oh, great. I have to do it now. Bed shredding.
This is our new workout plan.
Get shredded in bed.
Shredded in bed. Anyway, so yes, that is, I think it's important. Again, the more we can talk about these things in a way that is life-giving, loving, caring, respectful, thoughtful, all of the things like biopsychosocially, spiritually, connecting, the better we can have, the better sex we can have, the better relationships we can have. But first we have to expand our vocabulary, or be able to say these words, right? Not be terrified of them, not be silent, right? That's a common thing. People just don't say anything.
I want people to think about right now as they're listening, okay, with all the positions that I've done with my spouse, what have actually been the most connecting and the most pleasurable?
Right. And don't think
sometimes there can be like, oh, this position is more connecting, but that other one, man, that brings it. So it's more pleasurable, right? Which is fine.
Right. And as I say, think of it on different levels. Like
different
what one
levels,
made me feel like I was connecting like spirit to spirit almost, which sounds weird, but you know what I mean. And then what one is just like, oh, that feels good on the wang, right?
Or the V.
Like the D feels amazed here. Amazed.
Amazed.
But you get what I'm saying, right? Think of it in with complexity. Allow there to be more complexity in the communication of these things, in thinking about them before you communicate them, in how you communicate them. Like this is a complex process, and we need to honor that. So that's why we can't just say like we talked about earlier. Like if you just say, "Hey, can we do this?" Like you're not honoring that your spouse is complex, and they might be like, did you see that in porn? Like, I don't like how that felt, right? Be more complex in your communication. That doesn't mean it's got to be like super challenging. It just means you got to think like for 2 seconds before you say a word.
Right.
Okay, you stopping thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how much time do we have? I don't know.
A few minutes.
Oh yeah, I guess literally a few minutes. So no, I'll hold that one. That's I think it's a good thought. But I do want you guys, when you're listening, actually think about the times when you have been having the sex, the in and outs. What is most connecting? What position is most pleasurable? They don't have to be the same, but I want you to think about that and tell your spouse, like, hey, when you were in that, on me, behind me, who knows what, on top, whatever, man, that felt so freaking good.
And also expand your vocabulary per like emotional range. You don't always want the same kind of sex, right?
Tell me more about that.
So like if I'm feeling sad, I might still want sex, but it's going to be very different than if I just got a huge job promotion or my book deal signed, right? It might be different. Like it will be different. There's no might about it, right? So we have to think, again, it's about adding in the complexity of the sexual relationship and not just being like, yep, all sex should be the same all the time no matter what, because it shouldn't be. And when it is, we feel very unfulfilled because we are complicated people. We have emotional...
Do you eat the same thing for dinner every single night? At the same restaurant every night?
No. And if I'm going on a fancy date, I go and get steak or Indian food, which I don't eat every single day, right? Because it's expensive.
Should have Indian food tonight.
Yeah.
I got the taste.
But you see what I'm saying. So allow for complexity. Okay. We love you guys. We hope that you've enjoyed this. If you want more stuff like this, go to patreon.com/anatomy of marriage and join our Patreon crew. And if you're already a Patreon, we love you. Air 5. All right. See you later.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one. Bye.